We live in a world flooded with information. Books, podcasts, social media, everyone is telling you how to live your life. Advice is everywhere. And yet, despite all this guidance, people continue to make the same mistakes, feel the same heartbreak, repeat the same failures. Why? Because knowledge is not the same as experience. You can read about fire 100 times, but unless you've been burned, you don't really understand what it means to touch it. Experience is the bridge between theory and transformation. It is the only thing that truly carves itself into your nervous system. When you go through something personally, when you fail, when you fall, when you get rejected, when you're betrayed, there is a psychological shift that takes place that no book, no motivational quote can replicate. It embeds itself in your memory, in your instincts, in the way you make decisions going forward. This is why people who've suffered, who've taken risks, who've lived through complexity, they speak differently. You can hear it in their tone. There's a weight, a certainty, not rooted in arrogance, but in lived reality. That kind of depth can't be faked. It only comes from experience. Now that doesn't mean pain is a prerequisite for wisdom, but it often accelerates it. When something matters to you and you lose it, that loss teaches you more about its value than having it ever did. That's the paradox. We don't learn the most from comfort, we learn from friction, from difficulty. The obstacle is not just something to overcome, it is the very thing that reshapes you into someone who can overcome it. You see this in psychology. Take trauma, for instance. People often think trauma just breaks you. And yes, it can, but for many, it also becomes the foundation for post-traumatic growth. They learn resilience. They learn where their limits actually are, not where they imagined them to be. And in that realization, there's power, there's clarity. They don't just survive, they evolve. The ancient philosophers knew this too. The Stoics, Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, they constantly spoke about the importance of facing life as it is, not as we wish it to be. Why? Because they understood that the only way to master your life is to stop running from reality. Experience brings you face to face with that reality. It strips away your illusions. It humbles you. And in that humility, something beautiful happens. You become teachable, And let me tell you that's when real change begins. When you're no longer clinging to who you thought you were or how you thought things were supposed to go, but you start responding to life as it is in real time. That's what growth is. It's not glamorous, it's not always visible to others, but it's real and you feel it. Now, this doesn't mean every experience leads to wisdom. Some people go through the same pain over and over and never learn. Why? Because reflection is essential. Pain alone doesn't teach. Pain plus awareness, that's what transforms. If you don't ask, why did this happen? Or what does this reveal about me? Then you're just enduring, not evolving. That's where responsibility comes in. You have to claim your experience. If you just blame others or circumstances, you rob yourself of the one thing experience is trying to give you: ownership. If you went through something, no matter how unfair, and you walked away with nothing but bitterness, then you've missed the lesson. But if you can walk away and say, that shaped me, then you've won something deeper than comfort. You've won insight, and it doesn't stop there, because once you learn from experience, you have the moral obligation to use that wisdom, to build something, to help others, to become someone stronger, not just for yourself, but for the people who will depend on you. That's how society moves forward, that's how families heal, that's how communities become resilient. One person taking their experience seriously enough to let it change them, so the next time you fail, good, pay attention. The next time someone breaks your heart, good, don't run from it, sit with it. Ask what it's revealing, and the next time life doesn't go your way, pause. That's not the end of your story. That's not of your story. It's the part that's trying to teach you who you actually are. Experience doesn't just teach us facts. It teaches us about ourselves. It teaches us what we value, what we fear, and what we're capable of becoming. It is, in every real sense, the greatest teacher we will ever have, because it doesn't just fill your mind, it reshapes your soul. And here's something people often overlook: not all experiences teach you the same thing. It's not just about going through something, it's about how you respond to it. Two people can go through the exact same hardship, say the loss of a job or a betrayal, and come out entirely different on the other side. One becomes bitter, cynical, and resentful. The other becomes wiser, more grounded, and more grateful. Why? Because experience alone isn't the teacher. It's your reflection on that experience that turns it into a lesson. This is where we begin to understand the deeper psychological dimension of experience. When you encounter pain or failure or embarrassment, your nervous system stores it. But the meaning you assign to it, the narrative you create, that's what shapes your future decisions. And most people never slow down enough to examine the story they're telling themselves. Instead, they react automatically. They repeat the same cycles, they keep dating the same type of person, they make the same financial mistakes, they sabotage good opportunities, all because they never stop to ask, what did this experience actually teach me? Let's be blunt, it's easier to complain than to confront. It's easier to say life's unfair than to say I made choices that led me here. But if you want experience to be your teacher and not just a shadow you carry, you have to take full psychological ownership. And that's not some fluffy self-help slogan. That's hard work. It means revisiting your worst moments with honesty and maturity. It means realizing that sometimes the villain in your story isn't someone else. It's your own avoidance, your own ego, your own refusal to grow. We grow through friction. Every difficult moment has the potential to become a chapter in your internal development, but only if you integrate it consciously. In Jungian psychology, this is what's meant by shadow work, facing the dark, repressed parts of yourself that only life can reveal. It's not theoretical, it's intensely practical. When you get rejected, what surfaces? Insecurity? Rage? Helplessness? That's the moment to ask, what is this really about? Because that's where the lesson lives. And if you keep brushing it off, that lesson will come back again and again in different disguises. Philosophers have known this for centuries. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius or Epictetus, emphasized that suffering is not just to be endured, but to be used. As Epictetus said, difficulties show what men are. In other words, adversity reveals your character, but more importantly, it shapes your character if you let it. That's the key, if you let it. You see, wisdom isn't gifted to the experienced. It's earned by the introspective. You can be Luke years old and still emotionally immature because you never learned from the past. Or you can be Arthur with scars on your soul and clarity in your mind because you processed your suffering deeply. Age isn't the measure, conscious integration is. That's what turns raw life into refined insight. And when you do that, when you reflect honestly on what life throws at you, something profound happens. You become less reactive, you stop making the same mistakes, you begin to see patterns in your own behavior. You begin to understand why certain people trigger you, why certain environments drain you, why certain dreams keep calling you back. That's not luck, that's awareness. And it only comes through the process of converting experience into structured understanding. Now here's where this gets real. People will try to talk you out of your growth. They'll say things like, you've changed, as if that's a bad thing. Of course you've changed. You're supposed to experience demands evolution. If you stay the same, you're wasting the curriculum life is offering you every single day. You're in school, whether you like it or not. The question is, are you showing up to class? So the next time something painful happens, pause, don't just react. Ask yourself, what is life trying to teach me right now? That question can open up an entire world of meaning, insight, and self-mastery. Most people never ask it. But if you do consistently, you'll start to realize that the worst moments of your life weren't detours. They were initiations, they were tests of character, they were invitations to become more than you were before. This is the true power of experience. Not that it happens to you, but that it happens for you if you're willing to pay attention. The universe doesn't waste pain, but we do when we ignore the lessons buried inside it. So don't just survive what happens, study it, learn from it, let it stretch you, let it mature you, let it make you dangerous in the best way possible, a person of depth, clarity, and resilience. You want a meaningful life? Then earn it. Earn it through the choices you make after life has knocked you down. Earn it through the reflection you do when no one's